Hey guys, I want to talk to y'all a little bit about this thing called the Enneagram, which I think that some of you are familiar with either because I have pushed it on you in the past, or I know that Miss Smith did some stuff involving the Enneagram with some of her Spanish classes this year. So maybe you're already familiar with this. And trust me, there is a whole wide world of info about this that is available to you. I have books if anyone is interested. But I'm just going to kind of walk you through them and show you how to figure out what Enneagram type you are. And basically what this is, some of you might be familiar with Myers-Briggs, whether you're an INTP or an ESFP or whatever, and you kind of know what that means. This is a similar thing, but different. It is a personality test where you're typed into one of 9 different types. And rather than just saying like what your tendencies are or like what your behavior is like, it really focuses on your motivation behind your behaviors and what the core fears and core motivations are that kind of make you the way that you are. And the reason that I really like this, and I was very skeptical about it at first because I was like, oh no, this is almost like a what's your sign kind of thing. And people are going to just assign every behavior that they have to the fact that they're a 1 or a 2 or whatever. And that's not the purpose of this. The purpose of this is not to be a catch-all for your behavior. It's to really look at why you behave the way you do. And the reason that I like this so much is because it has really helped me acknowledge that people are wired really differently than I am. And I think that's something that I've always struggled with, because it's like, well, if I can see the logic in this, why can't you? And if I think this is the right way to do something, why don't you agree with that? But people are just wired so differently. And I think that coming to understand what Enneagram type I am and what behaviors arise because of that has really helped me to sort of get in touch with what other people are like. And it's really helped me be a better friend. It's helped me in a lot of different relationships with people and just being more understanding of what they're like. And so one of the reasons I want to go through this with you guys is because you are about to head into the world of adulthood. I'm including college in that, even though college is kind of a weird universe unto itself. But you're going to be coming in contact with a lot of new people. And I think it's very important to understand how differently some people are wired than you are, just on a base natural level, let alone like the things that they've been through in their lives that you might not understand or be able to relate to. But also I think it's very important to understand yourself as much as you can. And trust me, over the next 4 years, whether you're going to college or not, you're going to do a lot of growing and developing. And while we might stay essentially who we are, we're going to be changing and growing. I feel like I'm quoting Bridesmaids right there. If you guys have seen Bridesmaids, you probably know exactly what part I'm talking about. I think if we're growing, we're changing. So anyway, I'm going to provide links for these things in the details of this video. But this first thing that we're looking at is an Enneagram test. There are lots of Enneagram tests online. This is the best free one that I have found. And there are others that you have to pay for that are probably a little bit better and more accurate. But I'll give you guys the link to this. And then once you go into here, you're going to click on the classical Enneagram test. And for each one, honestly, grade each statement. Yes, for yes, this is really me. This really applies to me. Partly for this is partly how I am, or like it depends, or in some circumstances, and no for this is not how I am. And it says if you don't know whether it applies, it's usually best to check no. You do want to ideally like avoid as many partlies as you can, but sometimes partly is going to be the answer. And you can see what kind of questions it is here, like things about what's important to you, your behaviors, your interactions with other people, and that kind of thing. And then once you're done, it will tell you which number you scored highest, and kind of run down the list of all the different ones that you could have. Okay, so I just randomly clicked a bunch and went through just so that I could show you guys. It'll tell you what type you're most likely, and then taking wings into account. I'll explain wings in just a second. But then it'll show you like you've scored highest as a type 8, second highest as a type 2, blah, blah, blah. It's actually funny because I am actually a type 5. But like I said, I just went through there. It's 14 pages. So it'll take, 15 minutes or so to take that. But here's the other thing. The best way to know what type you are is not to take an online quiz, especially one that's free and probably not that rooted in science. Even though this is not rooted in science, it's more rooted in just behavior and even like a little bit of spirituality. But the best way to find out what type you are is actually just to read about all the different types and see which one makes you feel really called out. So I'm also going to link to the Enneagram Institute, which is like, if you're interested in this is a website you should pay attention to. And these are the type descriptions, but if you go into each one, I went into type 5 because that's what I am. It'll tell you like a little brief information: the intense cerebral type, perceptive, innovative, secretive, and isolated. Some of that sounds good, some of that sounds bad, and it is. But it gives you your basic fear, your basic desire, and then the wings, depending on what type you are, you're going to lean a little bit more to one side than the other. So if I'm a 5, then I'm a 5 for sure. But if sometimes I'm going to act a little bit more like a 4, sometimes I'm going to act a little bit more like a 6. These types are arranged the way they are for a reason. There's actually a lot of detail to it. You can even see here, and this is just overview stuff. So if you're a little bit confused, don't worry, just read about it more. I'm a 5, so if I am really stressed out, I tend to act more like a 7, which is like really scatterbrained and like not focused. If I'm doing really well and my mental health is in a good place and I'm not stressed out and I'm feeling good, then I act more like an 8, which is really in charge and bold, sometimes confrontational. And in fact, I did struggle a while with whether I was a 5 or an 8, because I do see a lot of 8 behaviors in myself. But that's what those arrows mean. That's why this whole thing is designed that way. So it's just kind of telling you like what you tend to be more like. I actually have fairly balanced wings, but I would say I'm more of a 4. So on this page, it gives you a lot of information: what the arrows mean, an overview, some like famous people who are that type. There's a little podcast from one of the foremost experts on the Enneagram. Levels of development, like how well you're doing, if you're healthy or if you're unhealthy, and that means like mentally. Compatibility with other types in relationships, misidentification with other types, if you think you're one thing but you might actually be another. Addictions, personal growth recommendations, lots of things. So we're not going to go through all of that. I'm just going to give you a link to it. But is this what I want? Yes. Okay. I'm going to briefly go over what the different types are. Enneagram Type 1 is the reformer, known for being a perfectionist, responsible, and fixated on improvement. I'm not going to read this whole thing, but people of this personality type are essentially looking to make things better, as they think nothing's ever quite good enough, which is why they're perfectionists and idealists. They have a fine eye for detail. They're always looking to improve. They tend to have feelings of guilt for having fallen short. They tend to feel guilty about being angry ever. They tend to be really serious people, not all the time, but they definitely have a serious side. Highly principled, competent, and uncompromising. They follow the rules and expect others to do so as well. They're driven and ambitious, sometimes workaholics, which means they can wind up being tense people who have a hard time relaxing and unnecessarily deny themselves many of the harmless pleasures of life. They're seldom spontaneous. They're often intelligent and independent. And we're not going to go into all this stuff about mistyping yourself, because I think you need to at least try to type yourself first. But yeah, they tend to play by the rules, and sometimes they feel like they have a higher calling, like a lot of teachers and nurses and ministers and people like that, who feel that they're like called into their profession. A lot of times they're type ones, because they feel like they have this thing that they have to accomplish in order to make the world a better place. So type 2 is known as the helper. And just for the record, this is the most commonly misidentified, like people think that they're 2s when they're not 2s. But it's people who need to be needed. Most of you guys, if not all of you guys, know Miss Kathan. She's like the probably the most 2 person I know. She's just like textbook version of a 2. These people feel that they're worthy insofar as they are helpful to others. Love is their highest ideal. Selflessness is their duty. Giving to others is their reason for being. Involved, socially aware, usually extroverted. They're the type of people who remember everyone's birthday and who go the extra mile to help out a coworker, spouse, or friend in need. Absolutely. They sound like great people, and they are. Warm, emotional people. They care a lot about personal relationships. Helping others makes them feel good about themselves. Being needed makes them feel important. Their self-image kind of revolves around being needed or like being helpful to people. Sometimes have a sense of entitlement when it comes to the people closest to them. The darkest side of the type 2 appears when they start to feel like they'll never receive the love that they deserve for all of the efforts. They're usually helping others meet their needs so they can forget to take care of their own. But the helper is the essential word there. They love to help people. That's what makes them feel valuable. Type 3s are the achiever. People of this personality type need to feel validated in order to feel worthy. They pursue success and want to be admired. They're frequently hardworking, competitive, and highly focused in the pursuit of their goals. Whatever their goals might be. They're usually socially competent, extroverted, charismatic. Mr. Jufer is actually a 3. Self-confident, practical, driven. Their need to be validated for their image often hides a deep sense of shame about who they really are. Oh no. Often generous and likable, but difficult to really know, and can be kind of narcissistic. People who are focused on having like a good job and an attractive spouse or mate or whatever, they want to look like they have everything together. And that's kind of their motivation. Focus on the presentation of success to attain validation. Type 4 is the individualist, identity seekers who feel unique and different. Mr. B was a type 4, which was a pain sometimes. They tend to build their identities around their perception of themselves as being somehow different or unique. They see their difference from others as being both a gift and a curse. A gift because it sets them apart for those they perceive as being somehow common, and a curse as it so often happens to separate them from the simpler forms of happiness that others really seem to enjoy. Emotionally complex and highly sensitive, even if they don't always admit that. They long to be understood and appreciated for their authentic selves, but easily feel misunderstood and unappreciated. And for the record, you guys are at an age right now where you probably feel all those things anyway. But is that something that you've always felt? Is that something you're going to continue to feel? Feeling really different from other people is one of the key characteristics of a 4. They have a tendency to withdraw when the world seems harsh or cruel, and are often somewhat moody or temperamental. They live a lot of their lives in their own heads. A lot of times they're really artistic. They're very concerned with self-expression, and they can be kind of moody and self-absorbed. Type 5s, that's me, the investigator. Thinkers who tend to withdraw and observe. And if you have ever seen me around like a bunch of other adults, I'm probably not the person like in the middle of the room, having all the attention on them. I'm kind of like sitting on the side, looking at what everybody else is doing and trying to analyze it. this is hard to read for me personally because it makes me feel really called out, and that's how you know you found the right type. People of this personality type essentially fear that they don't have enough inner strength to face life, so they tend to withdraw, to retreat into the safety and security of the mind where they can mentally prepare for their emergence into the world. Fives feel comfortable and at home in the realm of thought. They are generally intelligent, well-read, and thoughtful, and they frequently become experts in the area that capture their interest. While they're sometimes scientifically oriented, just as many are drawn to the humanities or to have artistic inclinations. They're often a bit eccentric. They're not usually gonna try to just go along with the crowd. They're not gonna compromise their freedom. They want to just do what they want to do. Tend to be quite uncomfortable when it comes to dealing with their emotions or the demand of a relationship or the need to find a place for themselves in the world. Tend to be shy, non-intrusive, independent, and reluctant to ask for help. Yup. Sensitive, that doesn't always come across, but fives are very sensitive. They don't feel adequately defended against the world. And to compensate for that, sometimes they adopt an attitude of carelessness or intellectual arrogance, which has the unfortunate consequence of creating distance between themselves and others. They are usually emotionally restrained when it comes to emotional expression, but actually do have pretty strong feelings. I can vouch. An often exaggerated need for privacy and deep-seated fear of intrusion. That's absolutely true. Sometimes even like a phone call feels intrusive because it's like, I wasn't prepared for that. I didn't, I'm not ready to like speak with someone. You really have to like brace yourself to interact with people sometimes. Type 6, this is what my best friend is. I wish I knew one around here that you guys would know. But they're called the Loyalists, and it's a huge conflict between trust and distrust. They just feel very insecure, like there's nothing quite steady enough to hold on to. And the root fear for them is fear or anxiety. This anxiety has a very deep source and can manifest in a variety of different styles. They can be kind of difficult to describe and difficult to type. Lots of worrying and restless imaginings of everything that might go wrong. So they're good in situations where you really have to sort of prepare for things that could go wrong, but they're also sort of always expecting the worst. They don't trust easily. They're often ambivalent about others until the person's proven themselves, in which case they'll be super loyal. They're looking for something or someone to believe in. So they actually have a pretty complicated relationship with authority. Like authority needs to prove that they're worthy of being in authority. Sometimes sixes are really like basically phobic because they're so scared of everything. And the other side of that coin is that because they're sort of like worried about everything, they take a defiant stance against whatever they find threatening. There's just a lot of worrying and like indecision and sort of like fear about making wrong decisions, fear about everything that could go wrong, but they're also really, really good friends, for the record. Type 7, this is what my sister is, which I know that you guys don't know her, most of you don't, but they are the enthusiast, pleasure seekers and planners in search of distraction. And for the records, 7s think that 7s are the best type. And there's no best type. We're all different. In fact, depending on what you value in people, you might totally disagree on what the best type is. But these people are essentially concerned that their lives should be an exciting adventure. They're very future oriented. They're restless. They always think something better is around the corner. They're quick thinkers who have a great deal of energy and who make a lot of plans. They tend to be extroverted, multi-talented, creative, and open-minded. Enthusiasts who enjoy the pleasures of the senses and who don't believe in any form of self-denial. They're usually very good with people. They know how to network and promote themselves and their interests. They tend to like get people on board with their big ideas, but they're pretty unfocused. They can be kind of scatterbrained and jump from one thing to the next. The central problem for sevens is that pursuit of pleasure is compulsive. They are afraid of the power of negative states of mind, meaning they don't want to feel bad things and will do whatever they need to do to not feel bad things. My sister has to be like constantly watching something or listening to something. Like she cannot be alone with her own thoughts, which is annoying sometimes, but I mean, I guess I get it. They usually have a high opinion of themselves and their talents. They tend to focus on their strengths and virtues and downplay their flaws and vices, often a bit self-centered. Again, don't want to confront their darker emotions. Very happy and enthusiastic and easy to get along with, but sort of scattered and not focused and sometimes a little annoying. Type 8, which is one of, I think that type 8 might be the best type, but I know some people who really don't like 8s. Mr. Nykirk is an 8 for the record. The challenger, taking charge because they don't want to be controlled. And that's really, obviously for a principal, that's probably a good type to be. They're unwilling to be controlled either by others or their circumstances. They fully intend to be masters of their fate. They're strong-willed, decisive, practical, tough-minded, and energetic. They also tend to be domineering. Their unwillingness to be controlled by others frequently manifests in the need to control others instead. Oh gosh, I had a really good quote about 8s from another book that I have. I definitely recommend, even though you guys are not millennials, I recommend the book Enneagram, because it's very practical for young people and like really easy to understand the different types. 8s generally have powerful instincts and strong physical appetites, which they indulge in without feelings of shame or guilt. They want a lot out of life and feel fully prepared to go out and get it. They need to be financially independent and often have a hard time working for anyone. They have a hard time lowering their defenses in intimate relationships. They're going to like build up some walls. They don't want to be emotionally vulnerable. That's one of their biggest fears, which is one reason I thought I was an 8 for a while. That's the thing that 5s and 8s have in common. Betrayal of any sort is absolutely intolerable. If an 8 feels betrayed, they will probably lash out. They often have a sentimental side that they don't even show to the people they're closest to. But once an 8 lets you in, they're super loyal to you. 8s are prone to anger. They can be kind of aggressive. Sometimes they even enjoy intimidating others who they see as weak, and feel not much remorse about walking over anyone who stands in their way. And lastly, type 9, the peacemaker. I think a lot of people I think 9s are the most common types. Stove is a 9. Rachel Walls was a 9. I don't know who else, but they're all about keeping peace and harmony. They tend to avoid conflict at all costs, whether it be internal or interpersonal. Some 9s are really introverted, some are not, some are very active, but remain to some degree checked out or not fully involved, pretty much to avoid conflict. They really try to go with the flow. They're generally reliable, sturdy, self-effacing, tolerant, and likable individuals. They're usually pretty optimistic. They trust people who see the best in others, and they tend to see the best in others. They're usually pretty positive. They want to feel connected to other people and to the world at large. They just can't tolerate conflict. And so sometimes change can be difficult, because they just want to stay comfortable and in their comfort zones, and change doesn't really allow that. If they're not super healthy 9s, they might not feel like they can motivate themselves to act and bring about any kind of change. They're usually more resilient than they give themselves credit for. But mostly their thing is that they really just want to maintain peace and like stay in their comfort zones. And they can actually tend to sort of like lose their personalities when they become close to other people. Like they'll kind of adopt other people's behaviors. So nines in a way are kind of like the culmination of all of them. So just as a recap here, type one is the perfectionist, the reformer, very play by the rules, try to make the world a better place, usually like taking the moral high ground. Twos are helpers. They're really good friends. They want to feel needed. They need to feel needed. Their self-worth is based on how much others need and like them. Type threes are the achiever. They're very focused with looking like they have everything together. Sometimes they will make big decisions just in order to like keep up with what other people are doing. They usually do present as very like put together. Type fours are the individualist. They feel like they're special and different from everybody else. Their emotions are really important to them. They do tend to have like an artistic side, but they just feel different from everyone else. Type five is the investigator. That's my one. They tend to withdraw from people if people are too like overstimulating or are requiring too much of them emotionally. They're very they seek after knowledge. They want to know everything about everything. They're very analytical. They tend to become experts on things. But the emotional half of it is not always so easy. Type six is the loyalist, people who are very good friends, but very indecisive. Anxiety or fear is their like number one motivator. They're always afraid of doing the wrong thing or afraid of all the things that could go wrong. Type seven is the enthusiast, very fun, life of the party, but kind of scattered and unfocused, jumping from one thing to the next, don't want to feel their darker emotions. Type eight, the challenger, in charge, bold, confrontational, protective of others. That was one thing I don't think I really mentioned. Really seeking to protect people who, especially people who are in some way weaker than they are. And type nine, the peacemaker, just want to stay in their comfort zone, want everybody to get along. So I'm curious to know which one you think you might be. And again, I would recommend looking at the Enneagram Institute, going a little bit deeper into it, and you'll even see some behaviors that you're like, oh yeah, I definitely do that, which is always fun and slightly stressful to see what that looks like, and makes you feel kind of like crap sometimes. But once you feel like crap, you can recognize what you're doing and be like, oh, I see. For instance, I saw a thing where I think it was actually about eights, but this is definitely a thing that I do, where when you're getting to know someone, you try to be like the worst version of yourself to see if they can take it. and I totally do that. Because if they still like you after you've shown them the worst version of yourself, then they've passed the test and they can, you can accept them. Isn't that terrible? I definitely do that. It just wasn't a behavior that ever occurred to me until I got into the Enneagram. So again, the reason that I think this is important and something that I would encourage you guys to look into is because y'all are becoming adults now, and you're going to be interacting with a lot more people. And it's important to kind of recognize that the way other people are wired is not the way you're wired, and you don't need to get upset or feel judgmental towards them for that kind of thing. And just to give you guys an example of that, I pointed out Miss Kathan is a 2, Mr. B was a 4, I'm a 5. And there was this time, and I've told her since that this really bothered me, but Mr. B had done something to a shirt of his, a white dress shirt, and he couldn't get this stuff off of it. And he asked her to wash it for him. And she wound up having to wash it a couple of times, and it just flew all over me. I was like, why can he not wash his own freaking clothes? And why can she not just tell him no? And I was getting so upset about it. And then I finally just had to take a step back and realize she is feeling needed. That's important to her. He's getting something done that like isn't hurting me in any way. I would never ask someone else to do my laundry. And I would, if someone asked me to do their laundry, I'd be like, get out of my face. But that's me, and that's not how they're wired. And so understanding that people are wired in really different ways that cause them to behave differently really does help you kind of relate to other people and just get a better handle on interactions. Like, that's a thing that I was like, this doesn't have anything to do with me. Why am I feeling upset about it when they're both fine? I'm not even a part of it. So that's just an example of like noticing how other people are really different and have different desires and different motivations and different behaviors, and that's okay. And then also it's just important because I think understanding how you work and how you're wired is so important as you're becoming an adult. And like, I wish I had discovered the Enneagram 10 years sooner, if not longer, because I think I'd be able to sort of explain myself a little bit better. And I think also it gives language to some thoughts that you probably already have, or behaviors that you have seen and just not really like picked up on because you haven't known how to explain it. So I just think it's a really good tool for helping to understand yourself and interact more positively with other people and just understand each other. So I would definitely recommend you guys take the test, but also look into these and see which ones you feel like are most applicable to you, which ones make you feel called out about your behavior. And that will be a good indicator of which type you might be. If you have any more questions about this, I am a 5, so I'm instantly an expert in everything. But I have done a lot of reading about this. So I do have a lot of information. I have books, I have websites that you can use. So if you're curious, just holler at me. There's a lot of good Instagram accounts too, for the record. All right, that's it. Go forth and find your Enneagram type and be nice to each other, because now you understand each other better.